Tears streamed down her face, her voice raw with pain. Bishop J. Drew Sheard's daughter could no longer stay silent. After months of holding back, she finally stepped forward, and what she revealed shook the entire gospel community to its core. This wasn't just a daughter speaking her truth. This was a breaking point, a moment years in the making, and her confession? It's left both followers and critics speechless. This is more than just family drama, it's a revelation that peels back the curtain on one of gospel's most respected families. What did she experience behind the scenes? Why now? And how is the church reacting? In this video, we're diving deep into the emotional truth she exposed, the hidden tensions it revealed, and the ripple effect it's sending through the world of gospel music and ministry. Brace yourself, this story is raw, real, and far from over. It was more than just tears, it was a cry for help, a spiritual scream wrapped in heartbreak. Bishop J. Drew Sheard's daughter, Kara Sheard Kelly, has finally broken her silence, and what she revealed on camera is sending shockwaves through the gospel world. For years, the Sheard family has been viewed as untouchable gospel royalty, known for their music, ministry, and unshakable image of faith. But behind the polished sermons and award-winning vocals, something deeper has been unraveling, and now, the truth can no longer be hidden. As presiding bishop of the Church of God in Christ COGIC and husband to the legendary Karen Clark Sheard, Bishop Sheard has long been seen as a pillar of strength. But when your own daughter publicly breaks down and reveals emotional truths the world never saw coming, everything changes. Her confession wasn't just personal, it hinted at hidden pain, unanswered questions, and cracks in the foundation of a family the church holds sacred. What did she say? Why now? And what does this mean for Bishop Sheard's legacy, not just as a father, but as a leader of millions? Stay tuned, because what comes next may shake the very soul of the church. The internal conflicts she revealed will astound you, and just when you think you've heard everything, something unexpected happens. We're uncovering in today's deep dive, so fasten your seatbelt. Bishop Sheard's daughter's tearful moment captured on tape, what she disclosed on her father's health and stressors, the unsaid pain behind the pulpit, and how this single admission could change the course of the entire discussion about vulnerability, legacy, and leadership in the Black church. This is the real deal. The pulpit and the agony meet here, and this is the point at which the truth emerges. We must first comprehend the milieu in which Bishop J. Drew Sheard's daughter was born, one of high expectations, responsibility, and scrutiny, before delving into the emotional breakdown. There was more to being born into the Sheard family than simply having well-known parents. It was about upholding a whole denomination's legacy. Bishop J. Drew Sheard, her father, was more than just a local preacher. With more than 6.5 million members worldwide, COGIC is the largest Pentecostal denomination in the United States, and he eventually rose to become its presiding bishop. Gospel royalty is her mother, Karen Clark Sheard, one quarter of the Clark sisters, whose testimony and vocals have influenced the fundamentals of contemporary gospel music. Imagine, then, being raised in such a glare. From the outside, it appeared to be Sunday services with the elite of the gospel, red carpets, church galas, and blessings upon blessings. But underneath all of that spiritual glitz was a very real, very human pressure. Kara Sheard Kelly frequently alluded to the burdensome task of constantly being on in her early interviews and public speaking appearances. "I could never be just a kid," she once remarked. "Although it's a lovely responsibility, I've always had to stand for something greater than myself." Close followers, however, began to detect a change in the past several years. Even though Kara remained publicly devoted, she started speaking out more about topics the church didn't always want to address: burnout, mental health, and the perils of leader idolization. She said to the audience at a women's conference in 2023, "Sometimes we cover so much we lose who we really are, and the people around us suffer in silence." Most people thought she was referring to herself at the time. However, supporters now think she was also referring to her father, who has been bearing the burden of expectations for decades in addition to a designation. Given her recent tearful video, since assuming the position of top KOIC in 2021, Bishop Sheard's schedule has become more and more difficult. According to close insiders, she has been traveling constantly, lecturing all over the world, visiting other bishops' funerals, leading national councils, and still making an effort to be present for family. And displaying weakness was never an option for a man of religion, power, and public prominence. Or so it appeared. Then, Kiara's emotional moment was about more than simply her suffering. It dealt with the unseen fatigue that comes with being a child, a daughter, and witnessing a loved one sacrifice themselves and gradually lose themselves in the process. This is where it becomes even more tragic though. It was evident from Kara's subsequent remarks that there was a serious problem behind closed doors. It took place during what was meant to be a routine Instagram live event. Fans assumed Kara Sheard Kelly would be live to discuss another women's empowerment event or to promote her new gospel project, but it became evident in a matter of minutes that was not the type of live performance. She had a rough face, no lights, no filters, no makeup. She spoke in a scarcely audible voice to the audience, her eyes already puffy and red, the energy she always carried, lost. Then she said it, "I've put this off for far too long. I'm aware that some of you would criticize me for making this public, but I'm at my breaking point." That was the time. The floods began to flow, spiritually as well as emotionally. Few people anticipated Kara's admission when she broke down. She disclosed that Bishop J. Drew Shear, her father, has been experiencing emotional, physical, and spiritual difficulties in silence. For years, she saw him discreetly disregard his personal well-being, boundaries, and inner peace while giving his all to leadership, ministry, and the community. She said while fighting back tears, "You guys, my dad is strong. Although he is extremely strong, even strong people break." And I saw him attempt to conceal it under stages, suits, and sermons while breaking it. She hesitated, her lip quivering, her eyes swelling once more. "He's human, but I used to think he was Superman." Something in me has also been broken by seeing him gradually crumble and realizing that he didn't feel secure enough to admit that he was exhausted. The gospel world was taken aback by how straightforward and honest her remarks were. This wasn't a well-planned family message or a public relations statement. This was the unvarnished truth from a daughter who was obviously fed up with the act of perfection. She went on to discuss how the church frequently dehumanizes its leaders through idolization, how spiritual fathers, pastors, and bishops are expected to be everything to everyone, and when they need support, they are humiliated for not being strong enough or praying enough. Kara addressed this toxic dynamic head-on. "Even though he merely needed to be Drew, my dad felt he had to continue being bishop. He needed to sleep. He required affection. It was necessary for someone to tell him, 'You don't have to carry the whole kingdom today.' Instead, he simply persisted in pushing. We are now witnessing the toll." She never described the details of his health or mental state. The connotation, however, was obvious. Bishop Shear was deteriorating rapidly, and it had gotten so bad that not even his daughter could maintain the silence. Then came the most heartbreaking part of all. Kara said that on certain evenings, she sobbed herself to sleep, fearing that she might receive a phone call informing her that dad had passed away, collapsed, or worse. She continued, "We always assume our heroes will be here forever. However, I began to think, what if he isn't? What if I go back and realize that I should have told you, Daddy, it's acceptable to take a break. You are not required to save the world on a daily basis." The online chat room was overflowing, a terrible question that followers kept asking. Thousands of sobbing emojis, prayers, and shocked reactions. "Bishop Sheard, is he all right?" Kara, however, did not respond to that query. Not right away. She merely said, "Pray for him," while staring at the camera. "Just say a prayer for my father and for all the leaders who suffer in quiet Monday through Saturday, but smile on Sunday." It was then evident that this was more than a private occasion. This was an appeal to the whole church community. Even while that confession was extremely traumatic, the events that transpired in the days that followed made matters even more dire because Bishop Shear himself responded publicly shortly after that live event. And believe me, nobody was prepared for what he said. Bishop J. Drew Shear was the center of attention just 48 hours after Kara Shear's emotional live webcast went viral on social media. Would he answer? Would he deny everything? Would the fabled bishop come clean or defend himself? Bishop Shear didn't conceal, much to the surprise of many. He paid attention to it. He didn't flee. Rather, the Church of God in Christ presiding bishop took the pulpit that Sunday morning with a voice that was more vulnerable than most people had ever heard. The thundering authority and traditional preacher's cadence had vanished. He was alone with a microphone and a pulpit, without his trademark robe, entourage, or dramatic music. He also mentioned something that many pastors would never dare to say in front of thousands of people watching live online and even more in the cathedral. My daughter told the truth. I've been worn out. I'm more exhausted than I've ever been. The congregation fell silent. The silence in the room was audible. People were shifting, wiping away their tears, and several were clearly shocked that the bishop himself was opening an unexpected door. He went on to say, "I've been bleeding while preaching. As I struggled and died by my own strength, I smiled." At that point, everything changed. Bishop Sheard acknowledged that he had been fighting in silence for too long against bodily problems, mental tiredness, and physical burnout. There were Sundays when he preached while experiencing chest problems, weeks when he didn't get more than 3 hours of sleep, and times when he felt spiritually depleted but continued to serve. He acknowledged that he felt he was not permitted to be human because of the demands imposed of him, not only as a spouse and parent, but also as the spokesperson for a whole denomination. He uttered, "There's no Sabbath for some of us," with sparkling eyes, no way to pause, no way to politely say, "I can't today." However, that is an enemy lie. Jesus himself took a nap. Then he began talking about his daughter Carrara, his voice shaking. "She saved me, not betrayed me." Bishop Sheard claimed that he was ultimately compelled to face his own denial because of her bravery and vulnerability, that the healing door he had closed for years was unlocked by her tears. He openly and sincerely praised her for reminding the church that pastors are also individuals, and for not allowing her love for him to be stifled by church tradition. The most impactful part of all, though, was when he addressed all of the struggling leaders who were watching him both in person and on the live broadcast as he gazed out into the assembly. "If you're exhausted, express it to all the pastors, bishops, and other godly men and women who are listening. Help yourself if you're in pain. Your timetable is not as important as your soul." The gathering burst in gloomy communal realization rather than celebration. Bishop Sheard's words struck a sensitive, hidden nerve in the Black church community, causing people to nod, cry, and pray in silence. Even when we're losing, we're encouraged to stay strong, to keep going, to keep serving. However, Bishop J. Drew Sheard broke the illusion that Sunday morning. His decision to prioritize rest over reputation, healing over performance, and transparency over tradition had an instant impact. Pastor burnout became a topic of discussion in churches all around the country. Leaders started talking, numbers strong, but suffering was a hashtag that was widely used on social media, started by young pastors who claimed that after seeing Cara and her father speak, they were finally motivated to get assistance. However, this discussion continued beyond the pulpit because the Shorn family subsequently revealed another startling detail. There's something much more disturbing than emotional fatigue. The Shorn family never wanted to share the moment behind the cameras, behind the live stream tears, and behind the pulpit confession. Now, however, it is a part of the whole truth. Kiara broke down online a few weeks prior. She had called 911 in a panic. When she went to her father's house late on a Thursday night, she discovered him lying on the couch, barely aware and moaning of excruciating chest pain. Once more, he had been concealing symptoms like perspiration, dizziness, and tremors. He wrote it off as fatigue and worry. However, Kara sensed that this time was different. She didn't hold off. She made no request for permission. Reaching for the phone, she dialed for emergency assistance. Bishop Sheard was taken to the hospital and kept under observation for potential heart trouble. According to family members, "You are dangerously close," the doctors cautioned him, even if they did not discover a complete heart attack. This might not have happened if one more symptom had been disregarded. The wake-up call was that. All subsequent events were triggered by that frightful night. Kara's realization that she could no longer remain silent, that her father's life was more important than the church's reputation, regardless of the criticism that would be directed at it. And for that reason, she went live a few days later. Her voice cracked for that reason. Why she broke down in tears? She was carrying fear in addition to heartache, apprehension about losing her dad to ministry, fear of witnessing the church desecrate the guy it purports to revere, fear that another Black pastor who suffers in secret will die if they remain silent. The Sheard family made the decision to take a break following the incident. Bishop J. Drew Sheard left the pulpit guilt-free for the first time in years. He joined a comprehensive health program concentrated on his physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. and started gathering with other spiritual leaders who were struggling with burnout. Kara herself started pushing churches to establish authentic healing places and supporting faith-based mental health programs, not merely saying, "Pray about it," but accompanying individuals as they traverse their valleys. "You can't pour from an empty cup," she said. "Pastoring from a broken soul is impossible. Additionally, you cannot save others at the expense of yourself." Bishop Sheard and his daughter's story is more than simply a personal family narrative anymore. A serious issue inside the Black church is being revealed by this national dialogue, one that is calling for change, one that serves as a reminder to everyone that even spiritual titans experience pain, because there is a guy behind every cloak. Every pulpit has a soul behind it, and underlying every stirring lecture is a person attempting to maintain